Ladies and gentlemen, gather round and tune in for the enthralling spectacle that is episode 29 of F1 Philosophy. As we fasten our metaphorical seatbelts and prepare for another deep dive into the thrilling, high-octane world of Formula One, we cast our gaze backwards and forwards on this most tumultuous of seasons, the unforgettable year of 2024. This chapter of F1 has brought with it a whirlwind of surprises, triumphs, and no small amount of controversy. Our intrepid hosts, Sean, Nicholas, and the ever-enigmatic Gatsby, are here to guide you through the twists and turns of a season that tested the mettle of teams and drivers alike. Expect spirited discussions ranging from daring overtakes to strategic masterstrokes, and perhaps even a few ruminations on the ever-evolving technology that pushes this sport to its exhilarating limits. We set our sights on the upcoming US Grand Prix. What twists does the Circuit of the Americas have in store? Will we witness a battle of titans on the tarmac, or an underdog rising beneath the Texan sun? Join us as we reflect, predict, and philosophize our way through the narratives that have defined this extraordinary season and the promise of thrilling races to come. Pour yourself a drink, settle into your favorite chair, and let the symphony of engines and philosophies carry you away. Welcome to F1 Philosophy, where racing meets reason, and the journey is as compelling as the destination. Now onto the work at hand. A few formalities, if you will. You may find us on YouTube at F1 Philosophy, on Instagram at F1_philosophy, and finally drop us a line at f1philosophypod@gmail.com to join our ever-entertaining fantasy league.
You were a little premature there, Nick.
As always. Excellent introduction, Gatsby. You're getting amazing at these. I'm so impressed. You're doing your job and you're doing it well. You bring up a good point. You and I should start bringing about a drink minimum to this show. And I didn't get the idea for this, actually. I listened to an economics podcast, guy called Quote the Raven. He has a 2-drink minimum on his podcast.
I feel like that's necessary for talking about economics.
Oh, yeah. Well, that would be the same if someone was talking about engineering. For me, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Just some things just go over my head. So I need a couple of drinks to get into it.
I mean, in all fairness, the best ideas come out after a couple of drinks.
That should be the motto of this podcast.
Based on what you told me about our predictions episode, I would argue that that's not the case, but...
That is correct. If everyone remembers correctly, Sean and I were a little overzealous, shall we say, or liberal with our alcohol consumption.
Me more than you, I think, but
it was a good night for both of us. It was quite a bit of wild turkey that we drank together. Is the bottle still here?
No, that bottle's long gone.
Long gone. Mm-hmm. Anyways, as Gatsby pointed out, today we are eventually going to get to an Austin predictions, but we're going to recap our preseason predictions today. We were supposed to do this last week, but, life gets in the way.
Yes.
For both of us, it was just a lot to... we actually kind of needed this autumn break for all the crap we gave it.
Yep.
We owe Formula One an apology.
Yeah, we do. It was definitely much needed.
Mm-hmm.
I was definitely overworked the last couple of weeks, so...
Our subscribers want to know just one thing. Did you get a Coney dog, Sean?
No.
Disappointing.
Never again. There's absolutely no reason why I would ever want to eat one of those again.
Yeah, it's pretty garbage. Did you get Detroit-style pizza?
No.
Detroit-style pizza is excellent. Have you had it?
Yes.
You don't like it?
I mean, it's whatever, but...
Do you like New York-style pizza better, Italian-style pizza better, or Detroit-style pizza better?
I would say Italian.
Like the very floppy, very saucy, cheesy type of pizza, like wood oven?
Yeah, call it that.
Whereas, I know Barstool kind of made this famous with their one-bite reviews. You ever see those?
No.
No, okay. Anyways, there's the New York-style pizza, there's Chicago, there's Italian, and or Neapolitan as it's called, and there's Detroit. Detroit's the thick pan, and Chicago is a quiche. That's not pizza.
It's a pie.
It's a pie, exactly.
Yeah.
I will never call it pizza. I imagine it's still very good, depending on where you get it.
It is very good if you have it at the right place.
Do you remember the place you had it when you were in Chicago way back when?
Some Italian name, and if you don't make a reservation, you're basically waiting for an hour and a half. They let you order your pizza before you have a table, kind of thing.
That's amazing.
So it's the biggest one in Chicago. So
Probably Uno.
No.
Pizzeria Uno. No? Oh, okay. Another one then. Anyways, we got sidetracked. We're going to talk about a few things today. First off, I want to know, Gatsby, are you okay with Cairo the Cat being co-producer from this point forward?
Dear Cairo, the feline critic, ever must you tread with such remarkable audacity. How curious it is that you, with your silken fur and whiskers twitching with self-satisfaction, presume to unleash a torrent of critique upon me, a noble hound of distinguished lineage. Your condescension did make its mark indeed as you lazed upon the sunlit sill, casting aspersions upon my every pursuit, whether it be the tireless vigilance I maintain over my abode, or the exuberant chase of rogue shadows in the garden. Yet it is with bemusement that I observe your aloof disdain, for it belies a certain naivete that only a creature of your ilk could possess. Now let us discuss, albeit with the utmost decorum, the fate of those who wander too far into the perilous realms of hubris. You speak with such confidence, dear cat, as if the world is yours by divine right, but be forewarned, not all creatures are as forgiving as this humble canine. Recall, if you will, the saga of Stephen, that most insolent of squirrels, whose reign of mischief was curtailed with a swiftness befitting justice. Let his tale serve as a gentle reminder, a cautionary fable, if you will, that the gardens and glades, though serene, hold their secrets. Should you persist in your impudent provocations, might you find yourself laid to rest amidst familiar company? Take heed, my whiskered compatriot, for civility is my constant companion. But even the most genteel of hounds harbours a certain, shall we say, primal nature. May your days be filled with grace, and your nights with contemplation of wiser paths.
I got a lot of questions.
I think the answer to your original question was no.
That was answered very eloquently. Almost elitist of Gatsby. Talking down to Cairo, Cairo, he's saying, is very has a divine right to own this podcast. But the way Gatsby's talking about it, I have a feeling Gatsby didn't like the Middle Eastern accent that Cairo had, and saw that with his wonderful English accent that he was the better of the two by default. I wonder.
Could be.
Gatsby, how many dead bodies are in the backyard?
I don't know that you want an answer to that question, Nick.
You're in on it, aren't you?
Just say they might not all be animals.
Oh my God.
Meow.
Cairo's here? Huh. Cairo, I would run if I were you. You just heard what Gatsby said. Anyways, Cairo, you have anything else to say before you run away?
I don't know much about 9/11, but I hear the day started off with a bang.
Jesus, run away, Cairo. That's awful. Yeah, Gatsby's right about you. Of poor taste.
Very poor.
Very poor taste from Cairo. You know, Gatsby, you've brought upon a great case for you being the sole producer of this podcast. I was going to say maybe they could share the duties, maybe they could have some banter together, but Gatsby doesn't seem into it.
No.
Maybe this is like a new baby in the house type of thing. It's just going to take a while for him to get used to. Or
Possibly.
I think it's best for now. I just keep Cairo when I do solo episodes.
Might be for the best.
Might be for the best.
But back to F1, shall we?
Back to F1. If we don't hear from producer Gatsby in the next hour, it means he's burying Cairo. Anyways, first off, before we get into anything, what did you think of my Ferrari talk? I at the end of it, I elicited some debate and discussion, So here's your opportunity to say I'm either a fucking moron or nicely say I'm a fucking moron, I imagine. There's only two options, I imagine.
I was optimistic. I wanted to give you the benefit of the doubt. You told me you were not going to speak about Mick or Michael.
I tried.
It was going to be Ferrari, and you weren't going to mention any of the several names that you've beaten to death over the last 10 months, whatever it is. And that was a lie.
Did I mention Hulkenberg? I can't remember.
Oh, yes, you did.
Damn it. You see, it's just subconscious now.
Yeah. So you claim it was 3 minutes. I couldn't bear to time it, but it was at least 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
So that was a little painful. Mm-hmm. But you've successfully beaten that dead horse even more.
Thank you.
I will put it out there, and I know I've said it to you in the past through text message, but I think we need to start considering that Mick might be his own worst enemy. Him and his uncle and whoever else makes up his management team might be the one that's stopping him from getting a seat.
Maybe. Apparently he doesn't have one. That's what Steiner was saying on his I'm Not a Fuck Up tour, media tour that he did as of recently. And he was saying if Sebastian Vettel just managed him in the way Weber managed Piastri, he might be back, type of thing. Like he needed someone to smooth over the paddock around him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And apparently Ralph was not doing that for him.
I understand Ralph's position. I don't understand Mick not having good management. I understand Ralph's position. His brother is gone. And he looked up to his brother in an idol type of sense. And to see another version of him fail, he's very over emotional about it, I think.
Sure. And that's also part of the reason why I think it's a bad idea for family to manage family. But that's me.
It's a good point. It's a fair point.
I, for one, hate the idea of working with family, just outright.
I've noticed. We are brothers, though, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, but brothers that we've chosen, that's the difference.
That's fair.
Right? Like I run into this at work, or used to run into it at work with one particular colleague. She's like, oh, we're such a small company, we're like family. I'd say, no, we're not, because if you were family, I would have killed you long ago. I chose to work with you. I didn't choose my family.
Did you choose to work with them?
I did, whether it was the decision or not.
Anyways, it's for another day. Good. It was a good point, though, I want to say. Very good point. I'm trying not to talk about any of this. I am. I think it felt like I needed context. And the more I think about what I talked about, I have a feeling Ferrari's going to go on a tear next year. After I finally abandon them.
I have a feeling, and this is just a feeling at the moment, and I know you're going to say something about it, that they may have pulled off a nice little sneak attack here because of the nature of the next few races. I think they potentially come into a big haul of points.
If they pull off the constructors, it's impressive.
I don't necessarily think they'll pull off the constructors. But if they can give Red Bull and McLaren something to fear, which right now they're not, but if they put the pressure on Red Bull and McLaren and we have a three-way fight till the end, I think that's a win for them. And I think they might have put themselves in a position to do that.
They're normally pretty strong at Austin. They're normally pretty strong in Mexico. They're normally pretty strong in Brazil.
More traditional racetracks.
Yes. The last three, they're not necessarily. Qatar and Abu Dhabi especially. Las Vegas, they'll be good.
I was going to say the opposite. I was going to say Las Vegas, definitely not. Abu Dhabi is a bit of a shit show for everybody. But Qatar is more traditional than the others.
And you're looking at it from like a proper sense. Yes.
It's faster, it's more flowing, it's not as fumbly as a street circuit tends to be.
But at this point last year, they were getting hot, and McLaren and Red Bull still dominated Qatar.
Sure.
So that's where I would say it's probably going to come down to Qatar, I imagine, for Max and Lando. If it's wrapped up or not wrapped up by then, we'll know.
Qatar is second last?
Or second or third last, yeah. It might be second last because, yeah, they go Vegas, Qatar, yeah.
Okay.
This is going to be these next 3 weeks are everything.
And then we have another 3-week break.
Are you kidding me?
Basically all of November.
Unbelievable. Jesus Christ. Yeah, they got to fix the schedule next year. If you're going to have 3 breaks.
The ridiculous part to me is that it's a triple header into 3 weeks off.
Yeah, they could have, I guess, spread out Brazil.
Yeah, and I get it because they're doing the Americas all at once, so it's kind of more of a pain in the ass to go to the US, go home, go to Mexico, go home, go to Brazil, go home. So it makes sense to group them all at once, but at the same time, it kind of makes the season a little fumbly.
And Vegas is having free cold, right? Like, actually, it would have made a lot of sense to have Vegas this weekend in the schedule, and then go Vegas, Texas, Mexico. That's a decent triple header. And then have a couple weeks off for Brazil, and then a couple weeks off for Qatar. Sorry, we're getting lost in the weeds like we always do.
Yeah.
Let's recap before we get into what we saw in practice and sprint qualifying. Let's recap our predictions for 2024.
So going back to the beginning.
We'll go right back to the beginning. Well, like I said, we wanted to do this last week, but no time whatsoever. So we'll do it now, quickly, and then we'll talk about what we saw in Austin, which there was quite a bit. Even in just sprint qualifying, there's quite a bit to talk about.
Yeah.
I just outlined, and I re-listened to our episode, and I was telling Sean off microphone. Stupid. I just made notes on the stuff we got right. So I'll just list off some of the things we got right, and you can comment on them. So the first one, which was completely noticeable, and you nailed, was Zach Brown was going to be a complete douchebag the entire season.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's not much to say about that, but like we were just talking about it in the context of he was making a big issue about VCARB, if you remember correctly, preseason, and how this is not fair from Red Bull.
Right. They shouldn't be able to own 2 teams, and they shouldn't be able to piggyback off of each other's resources.
And you nailed it, I think, a couple weeks later when you said, suddenly he's gone quiet after the first week of the season.
Yeah, once they proved to not be a threat to McLaren, he didn't care anymore.
Exactly. So what was the whole thing for the 3 months in the offseason, Zach?
Yeah, well, they all have to bitch to try and get whatever advantage they can, right?
What else? Sorry, he's talked about something else in recent weeks. In mid-season, he was saying Max wasn't a good driver. He's
Wasn't
all
as
car.
good as everybody makes him out to be, yeah.
And as we saw in especially Singapore, Zandvoort and Silverstone races where Red Bull was atrocious, where was Max?
Right up there.
Second place in all those races
Yeah.
in non-winning positions. I'll let you say it, whatever you want to say to him. I just want to say shut the fuck up, Zach Brown. And that was a prediction you nailed preseason.
Yeah, and he's been back at it this weekend as well. And it's basically him and Horner doing what Horner and Wolf did in 2021. Right? They get out there and they try and bias the media one way or the other to get popular opinion and try and get sway over what's happening where. The latest, I don't know if you've heard, but they're getting rid of the point for fastest lap.
I saw that. Yes.
That only became a big talking point after Ricardo took away fastest lap from Norris in Singapore. So again, that's Zach Brown saying Red Bull shouldn't be able to have 2 teams. They shouldn't be able to have 4 drivers. And a team that's not in the points shouldn't be able to take a point away from a team that is. Well, bullshit. That's my opinion. But they've all agreed, and it's this political shit show that is the F1 Commission. But so
It was kind of always an arbitrary, weird rule. To me, it had its cool aspects to it. I'm not going to be devastated that it's gone. But it did bring about some good strategy from time to time. Like I'll give an example. Where was McLaren 22 seconds up on Max in Singapore, pitting Norris late on for softs to take back the fastest lap point?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's Max basically won 2021 because of that fastest lap points. Not actually, but a lot of races were helped by him getting that extra point. It just brings about an extra strategic part of the race.
Right.
So suddenly, now that Mr. Brown doesn't like it, it's got to go because it doesn't benefit him.
I mean, it wasn't just Zach Brown. We can't put it down to him. It requires a vote, and it requires a majority to agree with it. So obviously the teams didn't want it. Frankly, I didn't mind it. It did add another layer of uncertainty and another layer of strategy to it that you didn't have before, right? Because I can't think of a particular scenario where this would work out, what the numbers would have to be. But let's just say Max is floundering around in 8th or 9th, and Norris is up at the front and he's got the fastest lap point. Is there a situation where they might want to sacrifice the points that Max is going to get to put him on a set of softs to take that point away to help strategically remove that extra point from him, right? I don't know mathematically if it would actually work out that way, but that is something that gets people thinking. Or in the other case of, let's say another team, so Max and Lando are fighting, but if Ferrari is not in the points and they're very close to getting there, and that one extra point for McLaren is going to be a game changer for Ferrari, why wouldn't they want to take it away, right? It does add more strategic options for people to fight back. And I think it's frankly just cowardice on the teams that don't want it there.
I can't think of which teams wouldn't want it there, the back half, but it does help them when they're having a good race. It could.
Yeah, and you would think that this would be more of a talking point when Max is winning every race and getting fastest lap every race and getting pole position every race, where it's just adding another 20, 22, 23, 24 points to his total.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's not that, why are you arguing about it?
It's odd.
Yeah.
You also pointed out in that recap or in the predictions episode, you said, why isn't Zach pointing out the relationship that McLaren, Aston Martin, Williams have had with Mercedes for how long? Right?
Yeah, and I mean, recently the relationship between Mercedes and McLaren hasn't been there. Like, they used to have a really good relationship back in the early 2000s and 90s. But since Mercedes came back as a constructor, that relationship hasn't been there. But you're absolutely right. Like, the relationship between Williams and Mercedes is more or less the same.
Yeah.
They don't own Williams, but I guarantee you they get preferential pricing on certain components that they use.
Drivers,
they're sharing. I guarantee you there are more resources behind the scenes that we're not seeing that get shared.
Sure there are.
Not to mention Vader to Palpatine, but
Vader's Wolf?
no.
No. Vader's vowels. Palpatine
Yes.
is Wolf. Okay.
Anyway,
I got there. It's been a while since I've seen the Star Wars movies. And I never really watched the Clone Wars. Is that any good? Anyway. I'm back, everybody. I want to give myself a pat on the back. I said McLaren would start slow. Did everybody hear that?
yeah, we heard that.
That's me patting my back. Yeah. I did think they would have more friction though, just to humble myself a bit. I thought they would have a lot more friction between Oscar and Lando, and you nailed it. You said they would coalesce around Lando, and you were correct.
I feel like that was a pretty clear picture that was made. And I think it's that way because Piastri is mature and level-headed, and he's willing to let it happen. But I feel like we've beaten that relationship to death.
For he's willing to let it happen for now.
Yes.
To be continued, everybody. You and I said Red Bull could be destroyed by arrogance. That they had such a dominant season in 2023 that if they mess up development, they would fall off. Pat ourselves on the back for that.
Yeah, not necessarily arrogance, definitely hubris.
That's a better word. You mentioned something about them copying the shark fin from Merck and how that could be good and could be bad, and it seems to have been both.
Yeah, and I'm not sure shark fin was the right word. It was kind of those air inlets that ran down the back of the car. They definitely went backwards, but it doesn't appear to be related to that particular piece of bodywork. It's more related to the floor, but yeah.
Interesting. I'm pretty proud about this one. I said we would see the real K-Mag this year.
Elaborate.
That he's absolutely terrible and overrated, and they had a lucky 2022. And we saw the real K-Mag this year. He has to bully the back half to get points for his team for Hulkenberg, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I also said Haas would not finish last, despite popular belief at the time. Almost everybody believed that Haas would finish last, based on the way they came out. They had low expectations this year. I said they would pip Sauber, who I also nailed. That they would come dead last. I just saw the way they were developing the previous year, and they were going nowhere. And they kept just going backwards and backwards, and you could just see the trend to zero with Sauber. I actually thought they'd have points by now. But no dice. No. Do you want to comment on that?
No. I mean, I think you've got it. They've been absolutely miserable.
And Haas is doing even better than I thought. And they are, as of right now, I think legitimately the 6th, sometimes 5th fastest car, depending on the weekend. You can tell because Hulkenberg's ceiling is 9th. So that means they are the 5th fastest car. Otherwise, he would be 12th.
Yeah.
So, kudos. Not proud of this. I got Alpine way wrong, but Sean, you nailed it. You absolutely knocked Alpine out of the park. Now, you didn't predict them to be this bad, but you said the dysfunction would get out of hand.
Yes. And it has. They've gone very French about it.
I don't think they're gonna get a point in the next 6 races. It doesn't favor them. There's a lot of high-speed tracks there. Maybe Brazil, they could sneak something. Maybe.
Brazil's an interesting track because it's not necessarily a high-speed track, but it does flow very well. And we see teams that struggle elsewhere come back nicely in Brazil.
Such as last year AlphaTauri, where Tsunoda, I think, came either 7th or 6th or 7th. He came out pretty high.
Yeah.
And Danny was incredibly fast considering he was coming from a lap down.
Right.
Because
he came from a lap down to less than 20 seconds, I think.
Yeah. So that's a good point. So if they are going to circle points anywhere, it's probably there. Maybe Qatar, where Alonso got a podium a couple of years ago, but that engine was also a lot faster that year. So right now they're not fast, the Renault engine, and they're going to have a tough time next year too, until they finally get rid of it in 2026.
Yeah, they're saying it's about 25 horsepower down, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is.
Considering, like you've pointed out a million times, the grid is within a second of each other.
Yeah.
So that 25 horsepower is massive. DRS gives you 16 if you're lucky. Anywhere from, I think it's like 10 to 16 horsepower, depending on how good your rear wing is.
It gives you 10 to 16 kilometers an hour.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. There's no way it can add horsepower to the car. It makes the horsepower more efficient.
That's fair. Point is, Alpine looks
Bad.
very bad. And and Sean saw it preseason. I may have said that they would pip Aston Martin, who's not looking good, by the way.
No, I got that one very wrong.
A lot of people did. I nailed it. I didn't think they would be this bad, though. And if it weren't for that flurry of points at the beginning of the season, up until about China, they would probably be fighting out with Haas and AlphaTauri right now, or V-Carb right now. Probably behind both of them.
I mean, that's where they are fighting in the race with those guys now. Just in the standings, they've had the benefit of getting early points.
Exactly. And I was looking at it. I think they've only gotten points 3 times since China.
Yeah, it's been pretty rough.
Stroll's gotten 1/10. 1/10.
Mm-hmm.
What is he still doing on the grid? Like, considering we just lost Danny Ricciardo, like they're really pushing to lose Sergio Perez.
Yep.
This is a catastrophe.
We're realistically going to lose Colapinto.
Yes, but we knew that going into it.
We did. It's just, it makes it more annoying now that Lance Stroll is keeping his seat, but good rookies like Colapinto aren't.
I'm off the Colapinto train. And it's not because I think he's doing bad. I just think if the expectation was any higher with him, we wouldn't be calling this a success. The expectation was incredibly low with him.
Yes.
Like, it's like just don't crash the car and don't be as bad as Logan. Anybody could be better than Logan, the way he was going out of the sport.
Right. But the fact that he's outperforming Albon, at least up front.
Yes and no. Has he outqualified Albon yet? No. Just as we'll get into it, today was the first time.
Today was the first time, but it's also his fourth race?
Fourth will be his 4th race. Yeah. I brought up to you off microphone, I said Sargent outqualified Albon in the Miami sprint. So sprint to me doesn't...
It's still a qualifying. Yeah. You still have to go fast.
It's fair. I don't think we don't need to lose our mind over this kid just because he's done slightly better than we expected.
No, I agree with you. And I think part of, like what you said, part of what makes it seem better than it is that we didn't have the expectation because his F2 season was not great. But the fact that he's been able to keep up with Albon and drive really well in that car puts a lot of positive shine on him.
And I agree with that. Keeping up with Albon is the key point. You're absolutely right. He's doing that. Way better than Sargent ever could. Sargent looked like in another division compared to Albon. It's just, I don't, how do I say this? If this was Nicholas Latifi in his 4th or 5th season, would we be calling this great? Right? Like if the whole idea is just keep it on the track and don't crash the way Sargent did, that's not a hard thing to do.
No.
Just Logan made it look hard.
But if this was Latifi's 4th season and he was scoring points and keeping up with Albon, I think you do call it a success.
And it begs the other question: is Albon as good as we think he is?
Which is hard to say at this point.
Yeah, that's actually another prediction you had. We were walking right into it. You said preseason, is Albon overrated or are his teammates really bad? You said we'd find out this year.
We would. And don't get me wrong, I'm an Albon fan. I think he's good. I'm just not sure if all the hype around what he's done at Williams is because of him or because Williams is getting better.
That's another question I have with Colapinto, because the car is Law VS, who I talk about all the time. He brought up a statistic from the people who track car performance. I forget the company that does it. That's the main one for Formula One. AWS.
Amazon Web Service.
Yes. They're saying Williams is the 6th fastest car in the last 5 races.
Yep.
So is Colapinto that good, or you're right, has the car gotten better? And also, is Albon that good, or has the car been getting better?
The one thing we can say is that the performance metric gets skewed by the driver. It's currently the 6th fastest car based on Albon, because he's the one that's been able to perform. Logan would have actually dragged it backwards a bit, but I think Albon's performance outweighs that, because you can always discount Sargent's performance as an outlier because it's so far off of Albon.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Albon setting that time justifies Williams as the 6th fastest car, yes. As long as Colapinto keeps up with Albon, you can legitimately say it's the 6th fastest car and he's worthy of being in F1. That's the conclusion we can draw at this point. I don't think we can draw any conclusion one way or the other about him or Albon other than that.
Okay. I'm actually intrigued to think what our subscribers think about this, because I'm really on the fence. Like you and I talked about when he was introduced, we're rooting for this kid.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I just don't want it to get out of hand.
Right.
So I'm a little torn with this. I'm really happy with what I see, and Williams should realistically fight for 7th, maybe even 6th if AlphaTauri keeps fucking up.
Yeah.
As we keep talking to him, as we will talk about later.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about with that.
So, listeners, let us know what you think. Reach out to either email, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you're finding us. Write a comment, write a review. Tell us what you think about Colapinto versus Albon and where Williams stands. We want to hear about it, and maybe we'll address some of those comments in the next episode.
We would love to. And please stop writing comments about how I'm crazy. I get it. It hurts.
Are you still hearing the voices?
What are you talking about? Isn't there a third person talking with us right now? Oh, boy. Anyway, it's open up our predictions for preseason. We'll just go over them now. I want to take credit right now before anything else happens, because like I just said, like less than a minute ago, I want to see them go higher. But I did say Williams would finish 8th this year, where a lot of people thought they would finish 7th or potentially higher, because as Val said preseason, 7th should be our springboard forward. Mm-hmm. And then he proceeded to make such amazing fuck-ups throughout the year that we question his ability as a team principal.
Mm-hmm.
Such as the replacing Sargent with Albon after Albon crashed, not having the cars available. What happened was it Zandvoort, where they had the cooler in qualifying? Was it Zandvoort or Italy? It was Italy.
No, it was Baku.
Oh, that's right. Where Albon goes out for a qualifying lap and has to go back in to get the cooler off?
No, he didn't go back in. He just tossed it off. He tossed it off in the pit exit.
Unbelievable. The spreadsheet that they were doing all their stuff on.
Mm-hmm. Which wasn't a Vowels fuck up. That's a Williams legacy fuck up.
Fair. And there was one other big thing he fucked up on. It'll come to me.
I gave him a lot of shtick about getting rid of Logan mid-season and putting Colapinto in there, and the fact that he ruined 2 people's careers. And I still stick with that. I think if Colapinto can find a seat next year, and Williams and Vowels are the ones that helped facilitate that, I think that makes up for it. But if Colapinto doesn't have a seat next year, I think arguably that's it for him.
Yeah, and if you look at Porsche, Drugovich, Vesti, Schwartzman,
Yep.
The second the stink or the glamour comes off just a little bit, it's hard to grab something.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing you bring up Schwartzman because everybody forgets about Schwartzman. He was Ferrari's next in line, and he has simply been jumped over for Behrman.
For no reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Other than Behrman was available in Saudi Arabia and Schwartzman wasn't. That's the only reason that happened.
That's ridiculous. And Schwartzman did better in F2, if I remember correctly.
I believe so.
Yeah. I think that's part of the reason why you hear the Colapinto to Sauber rumors heating up. That everyone in the British media is saying, "Oh, it's a no-brainer."
Well, it's not a rumor. Vowles has said he is actively trying to get him into Sauber.
Yes, but that's I think to save Vowles' ass, like you were alluding to. If he doesn't want to fuck up a career, so he's pushing the narrative, sort of like how we saw Wolff push Mick for the Williams seat. It just came up all over the media because Wolff wanted it there. Mm-hmm. Vowles is doing the same with Colapinto, which I don't know. I don't think it's going to work. And that Sauber seat is a death trap. That's Haas 2021 right now.
Yes.
Because no development, no money, and we're going to become something else a year later.
Mm-hmm.
No one should want that seat. Except maybe Valtteri Bottas, but we'll talk about that later. So yeah, pull up our predictions. Let's go over it.
They're here.
They are right there. Okay. One more thing you did say. You said Williams would be better than Alpine.
Yes.
Yeah. Good job, John. So let's start from the bottom. I said
Sauber 10.
Sauber 10th and Haas 9th. You said...
I said Sauber 9th, Haas 10th.
Still technically possible.
Mm-hmm.
Who did you say 8th?
Do you want the original or the revised?
Revised. I think we all know what the original was.
The revised is Alpine. And I think that's relatively correct.
They're 9th.
They're 9th.
And it doesn't, like we just said, it doesn't look good that they'll get any points.
Right.
Especially because Williams is looking good with Colapinto to get points.
Right.
Yeah. Who'd you say 7th?
Williams.
That's possible. That's not possible. That's why I'm taking half credit for them finishing 8th right now. I'll take half credit. I got it half right.
Sure.
And let's not talk about it ever again.
And your 7th?
Was
V-Carb.
V-Carb, and I said Williams 8th. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Who did I say 6th and 5th?
Aston.
I said Aston 6th.
Yep. And Alpine 5th.
Good God. My prediction, if everybody remembers correctly, is that not that Alpine would necessarily get better, is that Aston would get worse. Little did I know that Alpine would fall off a cliff.
Well, they had a good run. They got better, and then they stopped.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the grid got better around them.
At no point when they were getting better was 5th anywhere near a possibility. No. So that's way wrong for me. However, I'd like to take a moment to remind everybody who thought that Aston Martin would challenge for the Constructors' title that realistically they are a 6th, 7th, even 8th place team right now, and probably will be next year too.
Right.
Next, people, like you pointed this out excellently in the episode without me, Newey's going to start on the 26 car.
Mm-hmm.
So 25 does not look good.
No.
We need to put Aston Martin on suicide watch for 2025.
And just keep in mind that the 25 car has to be finished and on track before Newey can even start working at Aston.
And he can't really help with development schedule, can he?
No, all that has to be done before the car hits the track.
Yeah. It's not looking good for Aston next year.
No.
But they have surprised everybody before. So if everybody starts saying Austin's going to be bad next year, I'm going to say Austin's going to be better. You know what I mean? I'm going to go the opposite of the media on this one.
Yeah. Now, I'm just going to put my tinfoil hat on for a second here.
Nice.
say Milton Keyes is not that far away from Silverstone. I'm not sure exactly where Newey lives, but I'm sure it's somewhere in the general vicinity. So if designs for this year's Red Bull were to somehow end up at Aston Martin, perhaps they have a fighting chance of having a reasonable car next year. Sounds a little like 2007?
Oh, with Spygate.
Yes.
It's been done before.
I would hope that he doesn't send his wife out to photocopy the entire design package, as is what happened in 2007.
Oh my
I
god.
would hope he's a little more intelligent than that, if that is what happens.
Wait, was that was Newey?
No, that wasn't Newey.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But that is what happened. Somebody at Ferrari was not so enthusiastic about the way he was treated. So he sent his wife out to their local Kinko's or whatever the copy house was with literally the entire design book. And it just so happens that the guy that got the package to copy was an F1 fan and was a Ferrari fan.
Oh, wow.
So he photocopied it for her, and then he reached out to Ferrari to tell them what had happened. And that's how the investigation started, and that's how it came to light.
Something that important, why would you ever rely on random people?
It's 2007. Like, we're talking about thousands of pages of documents. It's not really something we had the capability to readily do at home. Right. In 2007, right?
That's a good point. Yeah. You needed big industrial printers, yeah.
Because even today, like with the scanners we have now, it would still take days to scan that many documents.
You're right. Still, there had to have been someone you could trust.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's just the point I'm getting at is that's lazy. That's very lazy. Anyways,
we digress.
15-kilometer drive, probably something, maybe more, 15 miles.
Yeah, I think it's more than that.
Anyways, point is, Adrian Newey, if you're listening,
I hope he has better things to do than to listen to us.
oh, he definitely does. He has to turn that fucking clusterfuck of a team around. Anyways, so that was my 6th. Who was your 6th?
Ferrari for 6th.
It happened 4 years ago.
Which is better than what my original prediction was.
Yeah. There was a lot of whiskey involved.
V-Car was 5th.
And preseason, considering they were their own separate team, they had their own mantra now. They had their own new Ferrari team principal from Ferrari. They were supposed to just get parts from Red Bull and run with it.
Well, they were supposed to have Red Bull resources, and they do have Red Bull resources. But they are their own independent team. And what tipped them for this position for me was their performance in preseason testing was astounding.
Mm.
They had speed, and they had speed everywhere. And it just seems like everybody else was sandbagging, and they were putting 100%.
Probably. And also, Yuki was coming to his own. The last 6 races of 2023, he was on fire. Mm-hmm. Danny had a lot of expectation on him, and all that seemed to fall flat, unfortunately. Yuki started strong, but then now he's I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with him.
I think the car's gone away from them, as it tends to do with that team.
Yeah, but this time last year they were crushing it. You would think they would have found something again.
We'll see how the next few weeks play out.
Yuki did have a good performance day in sprint qualifying, so hopefully. Okay, who did you say for 4th, 3rd?
Aston Martin.
Sorry, 5th. We didn't say. You said Ferrari 6th.
No, I said V-Car 5th.
Oh, V-Car 5th. That's right.
That's why we were talking about them.
Duh.
Aston 4th, which that's just wrong.
I don't know what to say. Yeah.
Mercedes 3, which could be doable.
They need to go on a summer run if they want to do that.
Yes.
It's not looking good right now. Who did I say for 4th, 3rd?
Mercedes 4th.
I think that's probably going to be right.
Yeah. McLaren third.
Yeah, I didn't think that what we're seeing now was this year. I thought it was next year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're gonna surprise everybody. And 2-1, who did I say?
Ferrari, Red Bull.
And Ferrari may still finish second, the way Perez is driving right now.
They could. But like we mentioned earlier, they have to go on a run of really good races.
And yeah, they may.
They could, yeah.
I think that's more Perez dependent than Ferrari dependent, like I said in my solo rant.
Mm-hmm.
If Ferrari sneaks second, it's not because they're doing anything good, it's because Red Bull's fucking up.
Yes.
And so that it might end up being McLaren 1, Red Bull 3, and I might get that Ferrari 2 completely right.
It could.
Who did you say 2-1?
McLaren and Red Bull. Which
It's close, yeah.
is still doable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it came up a lot today that we're one Verstappen DNF away from McLaren taking both, but we're also one bad weekend from McLaren away from losing the constructors.
And Perez getting his fucking act together, too. Like, if Max finishes first and McLaren has a bad weekend, let's say they finish 7th, 8th, that's 10 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Max wins, we'll say 25. But Perez comes out of the points again. They only gain 14 points or 15 points, which isn't enough. They need a Red Bull 1-2, which doesn't look like it's going to fucking happen.
Or they need McLaren to finish down the order, which looks like it might happen this weekend.
Let's get into that. Because I think we beat our predictions to a pulp. And we urge everybody to re-listen. I think it was episode 3. We gave our 2024 prediction, F1 season predictions. Listen, see how we did. See if you can stand our voices, because I had a hard time, I'll be honest. We've definitely improved.
Yeah, I'm sure the alcohol didn't help.
Mm-hmm. Austin, one of our favorite tracks, as we said preseason, brought about no shortage of talking points. Is there anything you want to talk about from practice or sprint qualifying first?
I just want to get a couple of things out there that happened leading up to all that.
Ah, yes.
So there's been a lot of talk about this adjustable bib or T-tray nonsense. It's another thing that Zach Brown has been very vocal about. So it's an open source component, an open source area of the car, which means that it's all published information. So everybody's allowed to look at it. Everybody's allowed to see what's going on everybody's car. So somebody was looking through data and saw, oh, look, Red Bull has a system where they can adjust this T-tray. So the T-tray is right under the beginning of the nose. It's the leading edge of the floor. So as air flows under the nose of the car, it hits this T-tray, which doubles as what the skid plates bolt to. So the skid plate down the center of the car bolts to the T-tray, and the skid plate ends at the end of this T-tray.
The plate is the plank that they measure at the end of every race,
The
right?
plank, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So that leading edge sets your ground clearance for the floor. So if you can adjust that leading edge, you're changing your clearance to the floor, you're changing how the skid plate will hit the floor, all that, how the air travels over it. So there is a benefit to be had by being able to adjust that position. And normally it's not so simple. Normally it's you got to take the floor off, you shim it, you do something, and it's a big overhaul of the car. So you're not allowed to change that, just like you're not allowed to change anything in Parc Fermé.
Mm-hmm. Which is after qualifying.
Yes. No, at the beginning of qualifying.
Okay.
Before your car leaves the garage, everything's locked in.
Okay.
You're not allowed to change ride height. You're not allowed to change anything except front wing and driver comfort. So Red Bull came up with a system where instead of having to take the floor off, instead of having to go through this giant complicated process to change that height, they have a mechanism under the driver's compartment that is accessible by removing some paneling, where you can get in there with a tool and change the height of that T-tray. Teams have picked up on that and asked for clarification, and the FIA has come back and said, no, you can't adjust that. It's against the rules to be able to adjust that to change ride height in parc ferme. You shouldn't be able to do it.
Just so we clarify, does this help with downforce or just airflow, just and potential engine speed because there's air coming through the engine? What specific thing does it affect?
Airflow to the floor. So it changes your ride height, and ride height is going to affect that porpoising or the bouncing.
There we go. That's what.
Because as the air comes into the floor and speeds up, it starts to suck the car to the ground. So this is what they were very good at last year, where the cars were set up with a very stable aero platform. They weren't gaining and losing a lot of ride height, which is actually what we see with Sauber that we've never talked about. So very flat platform, which is why they suffered so much at Singapore, because over the bumps you get a lot of change and your aero balance becomes unstable. But on tracks that are relatively smooth, if you can keep that ground clearance consistent, you generate a much more stable platform. So that allows Red Bull to make changes in that particular area much more quickly than if you have to take the floor off or if you have to take off a whole bunch of the car to adjust it. So the teams looked at this and went, well, it's in the cockpit. Can it be adjusted after qualifying? Or can it, if they were to qualify and have a bad result, could they say lower it to get a benefit or raise it to minimize wear? In theory, yes, they could. But now people have conflated that with, can the driver adjust it on the fly? No, they can't. So Max isn't in there with the wrench reaching between his legs trying to adjust this thing. That's not the case. And that was Zach Brown's original comments, that, if they're adjusting this during the race, then that's definitely illegal. Yeah, it would be. I would love to see a driver pull that off at 300 kilometers an hour. It's not happening. The question is it being changed while they're in the garage after qualifying, before the race?
I guess we'll never know now.
It very well could. Someone's got to get in there and take these panels off and adjust it. It is doable in those conditions. We have to trust that they're not doing it.
But was it explicit in the rules, like you were saying, or did this just something now that they've clarified should not be in the rules?
No, it's that particular mechanism doesn't exist, right? It's something that Red Bull designed. But the spirit of it, and I hate using that term spirit, is captured in the rules, because ultimately they're affecting the ride height of the floor. It's something that cannot be changed by the regulation. So if they were doing it, they were knowingly violating a rule, right? So they'll never fess up to it, and there's not going to be any evidence of it. So what they've put in place now is they've clarified that this is the condition around that technology, and they have to put a seal on it. So basically, going into parc ferme, they have to put an FIA seal, which is basically like a sticker. If you've ever seen those, anti-tamper stickers, warranty void if broken.
Yeah.
Something like that, over top of it to say, we've gone into qualifying and this is sealed. To which Zach Brown has said, well, how's that going to help? Because they can just throw another seal on it. Well, fuck off, Zach. Those seals are used on everything in the car. When they mate a gearbox to an engine, they put one of those seals on it. When they seal a gearbox with a gear set in it, they put one of those seals on it. So if that works everywhere else in the car, it's going to work there. Also, there are anti-tamper mechanisms in those seals.
And the way Red Bull is right now in disarray, do you not think, Zach, that if they were cheating, that someone in Red Bull would probably come out and admit it and gain a lot of fame, a lot of money, and go to a winning team and not have to deal with Horner anymore.
Also, go back and look at the garage footage. Like, literally, in order for someone to change this thing, they've got to get a mechanic with a headlamp in there and a wrench and his feet sticking out the... So go back and watch Red Bull footage in the garage after qualifying to beginning of the race and see if a mechanic's gone spelunking in the cockpit.
Yeah, he's being ridiculous. And I would just say to the FIA, if Red Bull cheated, fine them. If not, why did they point him out? Why did they call them out? Or was this more of a case of the media finding out that it was Red Bull?
No, this was legitimately a technical thing, and I think it's a good thing that they were called out. Not because they were cheating, but it is an open source thing, and they've done something creative. This is, again, an example of engineers finding ways to solve problems intelligently.
I was going to say, and I feel like this is something that maybe the other team should have just adapted.
And I guarantee you will see it next year. Now that it's been brought to light, you will see it next year. I think it took this long because everybody's so focused on their own cars that they don't have time or resources to dedicate to looking at all of the other designs that are made available. Right?
And it's not like Red Bull's worth copying right now at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, you see it that way, but so I'm sure we'll see more teams adopt something like this as we go, but now it's clear. It's going to be monitored. You have to put a seal on it. It's not something that can be manipulated during the weekend. And nobody who doesn't have a vested interest in trying to get Red Bull disqualified is claiming that they're cheating. Right? McLaren's not even claiming that they're cheating. They're just doing what the team principals do to try and sow doubt and throwing smoke grenades.
Which is what you said about me. You said I fell for Horner's bullshit in 2021 when he said, I wonder how the Mercedes engine is so much faster. They must be cheating.
Right.
When really you explained it to me, no, they just tuned the engine and didn't care about reliability because they only had 4 races left.
Right. Because you're allowed to change engine modes. You're allowed to change software programs. The only stipulation there is you have to make them available to your customer teams. But then the reliability came into play as well. So the customer teams may not have done it because they may have been closer to their engine limits, and Mercedes was willing to risk it.
Which is why Lewis Hamilton started last in Brazil.
Right.
Yeah, so you could add to that Zach Brown is setting himself up for failure in a sense by saying, if we lost, Red Bull was cheating this entire time.
Right. And we even had, I forget who it was, it may have been Oscar or somebody, one of the other drivers was asked the question, and it was another driver who's up there in the points as well. And his feedback was, listen, they're not winning every race. They're not taking huge amounts of pole positions and everything else. So it's clear that this isn't a game-changing advantage. So really, nobody who really matters is making us think about this. It's just this year's perpetual pest, Zach Brown.
He's not going away anytime soon.
No.
And it didn't seem to affect Red Bull at all because Max nails the pole for a sprint.
Very smooth circuit this year.
Interesting.
Which we'll make that the next point. The entire thing has been resurfaced for the first time in its history.
Oh, wow.
Which it's not an old circuit by any means, but it has been ground down, resurfaced, reprofiled in some areas, some new curbing, some, whatever. So apparently it is extremely smooth.
Max, if you're going to win, this is the weekend to do it.
Yes.
Changes the momentum and you have no excuses. What do you think is going to happen based off of practice and sprint qualifying? Do you think this is Max's to lose now, or do you think that's just an outlier? Do you think Lando made a mistake in qualifying, or he just didn't have the pace?
He didn't get a lot of time in practice. They were working on the car for a good chunk of practice, and then he got out there and he didn't necessarily look comfortable, but that is status quo for Norris in P1.
Hmm.
I mean, we talked about it in one of the earlier episodes. He tends to get out there and build and build and build, and he just may not have had time for it. Piastri didn't look too comfortable in practice either.
Hmm.
And then that came out in qualifying pretty hard.
Yeah. But his was more of a track limits than anything, right? Like he wasn't fast from what I saw. He was still only like 7th or 8th. But he was out in Q1 because of track limits.
Right, but again, that's a comfort thing. That's a car control. You need to be able to keep it in the lines, and if you can't keep it in the lines, you don't get to keep your time.
Is an upset in order then? Will we see a Red Bull, Max win with a McLaren struggle?
Max is very good here. So is Charles.
Mm-hmm.
And so is Lewis.
One from every team but McLaren.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Russell's actually pretty good here too.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. Our predictions have been so bad this year. I'm hesitant to give any. Do you want to? Do you want to give a top 5, a P10, a outlier? Because I'm liking what I see. Like, I don't like seeing McLaren win because Red Bull's falling off. I want to see McLaren win with Red Bull doing well, and they still pull it off. But
sure.
But this is looking like it's going to be a good weekend for Max and not for McLaren. And sorry, go on.
No, you go.
Well, I was just going to make a point about Jensen Button and Danica Patrick. Danica actually made some good points. Jensen made the point of Lando being emotional, and he's hoping that Lando doesn't snowball after this, and he gets his weekend back in order. But you and I have talked about it before. If anyone's going to have an emotional fuck up and fall off, it's Lando.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that a bit, but let's take a break for a second.
Okay, we're back from our tinkle break with our Brothers Bond gin. Cheers. We did our predictions episode with gin, or with, not gin, with bourbon.
There you go.
We're going to die with bourbon again. All right. What were you saying about Norris and snowballing? Or what were you going to say?
Yeah, so a lot's been made in the last couple of days by my favorite person to make comments, Helmut Marko, about how Norris is effectively mentally weak because he's come out and said he's prioritizing his mental health during the summer or the autumn break.
It's kind of lame, but yeah.
Somebody get this fucking 80-year-old asshole off the grid. Get him away from all the cameras. Like, the only reason he's getting the coverage he is because he's willing to talk to anybody. And he says stupid shit.
Yeah. I like the competitive mentality. I've talked about it before. The Kobe Bryants, the Michael Jordans, who never told you when they were struggling. You know what I mean? So I understand why Marco said that. However, his long list of bullshit has made this the final straw. I understand where you're coming from.
Sure, but it's also unhealthy. I get what you're saying about the greats have never done that, but it always comes out later. Right?
You know what? That's a very good point. They do. They just never said it.
Right. And it is a very unhealthy thing to keep that, so we need to make mental health more of a topic. Nick.
After he wins. Yes. Don't bully me. You're giving the bullying stare.
It's not bullying, Nick.
My mental health is being jeopardized right now. That's a joke. Okay. You're right. Yeah. Okay. If he wants to talk about it, and yeah, someone like Helmut shouldn't shit on him for it.
Right. But anyway, it goes back to the comments about snowballing because, yeah, it makes sense. And at least for me, we give Lando a lot of shit about losing his P1s on the first lap, not being able to execute a winning race until this year, right? And that would have a pretty big impact on somebody's mental health if that is your career, is to drive a race car really fast and be faster than anybody else. That would have a massive impact. So it's clear to me that that is something that was going on. So making comments like that, whether it's, oh, I hope he doesn't start spiraling or something, it's kind of ridiculous. He's working on it. And it seems, I'm sure he's been working on it for longer than the autumn break.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems like it's improved this year. So I don't see it as being a negative thing. That being said, is there a potential that he spirals? Sure. But hopefully now he's mentally strong enough to be able to bounce back and say, okay, it was a shitty qualifying. We've got however many laps in the sprint tomorrow. We'll deal with it then. And we'll be right back on it for the next qualifying.
Yes, and as you pointed out a couple minutes ago, you said he likes to build into his weekends. So maybe he's just building into his career. So maybe that part of those struggles, his first lap struggles, were just part of him building into his career.
Yes.
What we have speculated is that, unfortunately for him, his teammate is Oscar Piastri. So he doesn't have time for this.
Right.
Which may, in the long run, affect him even more. But maybe he gets better while Piastri gets better too, is another way to look at it. And for him, I would just say, don't ever look at the comments. Just look at your performances. It was very mature of you to say in Hungary, Oscar deserved that win. I lost after the first lap.
Yes.
That's a great thing to say. So just don't, if you're having issues with mental health, don't read the comments on Twitter, Instagram, F1. A lot of those people don't have the discipline and the ability that you have. They didn't work as hard. They don't make the money that you have. They don't have a girlfriend he probably has a smoke show girlfriend. His life's fucking amazing. He lives in Monaco 90% of the year or travels wherever he wants. You don't need mental health issues. I understand everybody has them. I'm saying you need to look at the bigger picture. Your life's pretty good. And that should help. I'm not saying this as to don't be a pussy. I'm saying that should help you in those moments.
Yeah. You have to look at it in the sense that he's forced by the job that he's in to deal with this nonsense every weekend. Right? So he can throw his phone away. He can not go near a computer, not look at any of the comments from anything. He still has to show up at press conferences, in the post-race show, in the post-qualifying, in the pre-race show, in the this and that and whatever.
Oh, they make him do too many media things. Yeah, all the drivers. Yeah,
They're all contractually obligated to do it.
Unbelievable, yeah.
And then you put people like Danica Patrick, Jensen Button, Will Buxton in front of these guys, and they ask the question because that's what they're told to ask.
And yeah, exactly. They're told, and that's what the comments have led the media to ask that question.
Right.
Yeah, I make that makes sense.
Right?
Danica Patrick affects my mental health, just for the record. But yeah, go on.
No, and that's just it. Like, he can't get away from it. And that's why I'm glad he's dealing with it. And I encourage everybody to deal with it in their own way, to seek help wherever they need to be able to build the tools to cope with it better. Right? To be able to say, yeah, I screwed up. I lost that race on the first lap and Oscar deserved to win it. That's the kind of mentality that he needs to have, that potentially he hasn't had up until this point. And I hope he continues to build on it and become a proper world champion that isn't a robot.
Yeah, Max makes it look easy.
He makes it look easy, and again, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist or anything like that, but I have no doubt in my mind that Max is the way he is because he has learned to cope with the abuse he got as a child.
when he retires from racing, like if he ever has in the future, if he ever has like a horrible accident where he can't race or he can't play video games, he can't sim race.
Or if he just gets bored of being told not to swear.
Point is, in his 50s, we should put Max Verstappen on suicide watch. That's my guess from all this, because you're right. It probably is a coping mechanism. It's just like, I'm just going to win. I'm just going to win. I'm just going to keep winning. I'm just going to keep winning, moving forward. And when he hits the final end of that road, I hope he doesn't live by a bridge is all I'm going to say. Anyway.
Oh, I don't think that's... I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried for Yas.
Can you imagine the conversation with him and Max on his deathbed, on Yas's deathbed? Wow.
I have a feeling someone's going to find Yas in a truck stop bathroom somewhere in the Netherlands.
Where's Mr. Verstappen? He's not in his bed. Jos Verstappen was found in a truck stop bathroom. No. Anyways. Max will not be a suspect. Everyone would be like, we know it's Max, but we're not going to fuck with him. He will not be a suspect. Anyway, you're right. That's a good point. I am part of the chorus being hard on Lando when he really doesn't need it. And who am I to say it? Who is anybody to say it? And he's growing into something, and it's very mature of him to say, okay, I need to deal with all of the noise going around in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So, point I was trying to make, though, is it doesn't look like it's going to be a good weekend for McLaren, though, based on what we're seeing thus far. They could change that whole thing in qualifying. But, like you said, he's not a robot like Max.
No.
Often where there's smoke, there's fire. When McLaren's good, they're good the whole weekend. When they're bad or average, they're average the whole weekend.
Yeah, but you got to keep in mind it's a sprint weekend. And this year, they're allowed to change the car after the sprint. Right? So even if they think the sprint is going to be a giant shit show, they can treat it as a test session to figure out what to do with the car for the race.
While Max gains precious points.
Right.
Which is the problem.
No, but it's fair. I think Norris is going to gain some points in the sprint. I don't think he's that far off. But while Max has a car that he's comfortable with, Norris has the ability to catch up. So, yeah, he may cede some points to Max in the sprint. But it's entirely possible that he comes back and is outperforming him come race day.
That's a good point. A lot can change in session to session these days.
And keep in mind, turn one in Austin is very chaotic.
Osama bin Russell on the front row
Yes.
with Max Verstappen.
Yes.
We hope Max Verstappen doesn't, quote, I'm doing air quotes here, turn into George Russell, because that would be a shame.
Mm-hmm.
Because poor Russell will just have to hit Max because Max turned into him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Colapinto and Lawson, the tale of two rookies.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to bring that up from sprint qualifying.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of Lawson? What did you think of Colapinto? We already talked a little bit of him. Is this a good sign for Colapinto? Is he going to keep it up in the sprint race? And Lawson was once again just a little average, if you ask me.
Let me touch on Lawson because it's the one I've been thinking about. His performance in the sprint qualifying was very similar to performances put in by Daniel Ricciardo.
Mm-hmm.
Yuki's up there, and Lawson not so much. Maybe it is the car. Maybe it is that second chassis.
We don't know.
Who knows? But you dropped an 8-time race winner for a 5-time Grand Prix driver.
Yeah. When the 8-time race winner was inconsistent, not underperforming.
Right. Which we've talked about it before. Inconsistent to me is one of the worst things you can be. But
I bring that up to say the underperformer in the Red Bull family was Sergio Perez, like we talked about two episodes ago, or an episode ago. That needed the break, not Daniel Ricciardo.
Yes.
We're just proving that. But I want to touch on something because Lawson, we talked about preseason, starts really strong anywhere he goes, any series he goes, and sort of just tapers off.
Mm-hmm.
He started somewhat strong in his 5-race cameo in Singapore and then tapered off. Is this part of the tapering? Well, we're going to have to find out now. He has 6 races to prove whether this is a tapering or if he's better than this, or is this just the start?
Right.
I would say it's part of the tapering. I think this is just who he is.
So let's refresh ourselves on Lawson. You probably remember this better than I do. What was his F2 career like?
Not good.
He won on debut.
Yes, a sprint though, reverse grid.
Okay.
Still won on debut.
Yeah. Did he win in F2?
5th.
5th. Okay. He then went on to Super Formula because that's what Red Bull likes to do. Send them to Japan, have them race Super Formula because, frankly, at the time, this is before the ground effects cars in F2, the Super Formula cars were more analogous to F1 than F2. He won on debut in Japan.
Yep.
Which was phenomenal and actually pissed a lot of the Japanese drivers off. Did really well in Super Formula until he was yanked out of it to go to F1. So 5 races in F1, I think, was 2 races in Super Formula where he got no points. So his competition quickly racked up points.
Super Formula is only 8 races or something like that, right? The whole season?
Yeah, 8 or 10. It's not a huge season.
You can't miss 2, yeah.
But he came back, and I think he finished 2nd or 3rd, maybe.
That I don't know. So that would be the 2023 Super Formula?
Yes. I want to say it was 2nd or 3rd because he came back and he put in some good performances, and he was still a title contender.
Okay.
So that's not a bad season. That's probably one of his best seasons in his racing career.
Yeah. But, he did finish 2nd. 4 race wins, more than the champion.
Right.
Lost by 8 points.
Yeah. And who was the champion? Was it
Miata?
Yeah. Who is now in F2.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, there's something to that. And way better than Giuliano Alesi, who people rated higher than that.
Yes.
I just don't know. And I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, like Colapinto. It just seems outside of his juniors, or I guess outside of Super Formula, the rest of it is just pretty average.
His career hasn't been that long, right? Like,
yeah. I know we're trying not to say neither of us are trying to say.
okay, let's put it into context. So, the last big name that went through this process of F2 to Super Formula to F1 was Pierre Gasly.
Mm-hmm.
He almost didn't have a seat because he was a bit of an arrogant little twat. Which, what have we said about Lawson's performance on Drive to Survive?
His arrogant little twat.
Right. The difference is Marco didn't like Gasly, and he took some of his comments to be anti-Red Bull, and Gasly almost lost his seat altogether. He gets thrown into the Red Bull, and he's terrible. He gets put into Toro Rosso, and he's reasonable. And now we see him where he is, right? A capable F1 driver, but nothing more.
Mm-hmm.
Race winner, sure. But in circumstances that gave him a leg up. He didn't win on merit per se, but as I've said, you have to be there to take the opportunity, and he was there to take the opportunity when it presented itself. So, he is a race winner. He's a competent driver. His super formula performance was nowhere near Lawson's.
That's
So,
fair.
with that as a metric, Lawson's got to step up on Gasly. So I'd say he at least deserves the shot. He at least deserves a season or two to prove himself.
When you put it that way, you're absolutely right. And that's probably the calculus at Red Bull as to why they were willing to dump Daniel Ricciardo. And you got to eventually give them a shot. You got to let them be there at some point.
Yeah.
But I don't know, just something doesn't feel right. Something's like we're reading the tea leaves and we're not optimistic with him. Are we? We want to give him a chance. We want to justify what's happening right now, but something's off, right?
My concern and what's off to me is that he's going to end up at Red Bull next year.
And you don't think that's right?
No, I don't. Frankly, based on the way the last 2 seasons have panned out, if anybody's going to end up in Sergio's seat, it's Yuki. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
As much as you hate it, and I can see you holding back.
No, actually, in this, after everything that has now unfolded, now that Danny is gone, absolutely Yuki's next in line.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I think at this point, Yuki is who he is. Now you need to give him a chance. Actually, I said in the last episode, what made the most sense is dropping Perez and letting Yuki do these next 6 races.
Yes.
But I think Yuki and Red Bull have resigned to that never happening.
Well, Yuki's come out and said, "Hey, listen, I'm here to be in the Red Bull seat, and I don't know why I'm not in the conversation, but that is my goal too."
His points scoring and performances it's probably the car, because we saw the end of last year, beginning of this season. He's got something.
Mm-hmm.
But the last 6 months, or not 6 months, but 4 months or so, have not given him, he's not knocking at the door enough.
Right.
And that's what it is.
But at the same time, look at what we're getting from Sergio.
I completely agree.
Right. So that's, to me, if you've given Sergio, this is his 3rd season?
4th. Because, 4th season.
His 4th season. 4th season with potentially 2 more?
Signing him for 2 more years is really stupid, especially when they did.
Right.
Also, I would say signing Yuki when they did was really stupid, because it seemed to light a fire under his ass.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're stuck with 3 other drivers. But we'll say this, before Lawson came in, you were stuck with 3 drivers, none of which you felt confident enough in that Red Bull, and 2 of which were locked in.
Right.
So I think we would have seen Yuki knocking at that door more if they didn't sign him. Like, if Yuki's seat was still on the line, I think you would see more out of him right now. And I stand by that. They signed him too early.
Which, yeah, Yuki has a fiery personality, and he's learned how to control it. But I think you're onto something, and maybe that is exactly why he should get a shot at Red Bull.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have people breathing down his neck, people saying he's not worth being there, and that may push him to the level that he can be competitive.
And every time that's happened, he has stepped up.
Yes.
Because Lawson comes in and outshines him, and then he runs rampant on the last half of the season.
Yes.
I agree with you. I think he deserves at least a trial. But you're right. This is being set up for Lawson to just step in because he's the only hope, which he's not.
You know what I would love to see? I would love to see Sergio shit the bed this weekend. Last place in the sprint, last place in the race. Go into Mexico and shit the bed like he did last year. Make a move that was never going to happen in DNF. It's 2 races in a row where he's been absolutely abysmal. That leaves you with how many races till the end?
4.
You just say, fuck it, Sergio, you're taking Yuki's seat. Yuki, get in there and show us what you can do.
Yeah. Which is what should have happened after Singapore. So, yeah, it needs to happen one way or the other. At least before they give it to Lawson. But based on what we just saw in sprint qualifying, Lawson's not the one for the Red Bull seat. But we'll see. It all comes down to the race. It all comes down to the actual qualifying and race.
Yeah, and Lawson's not the one for the Red Bull seat based off of his 5 races last year and the sprint qualifying. But let him play out the rest of the year at RB, and let's see what he does. If he scores a whole shit ton of points between now and the end of the season, great. Should he get that Red Bull seat? Probably not.
Mm-hmm. I would think if he scores a lot of points, he guarantees himself the RB for next year.
Yeah.
And that should be it.
Yeah.
A lot of fucking questionable things going on at Red Bull right now. That's all I'm going to say. They don't seem to know what to do outside of Max Verstappen. And it's odd. Right? Have they ever been like this? I guess with the Albon Gasly years, sort of, but they found a solution.
They've never had, up until Verstappen, they never had this driver conundrum.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They've always had good drivers. They haven't had such a huge offset in drivers since Verstappen came to be. But I think, like we've talked about, he's a generational talent. It was always going to be this way, whether Verstappen was at Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, wherever he was going to be, this offset was going to happen. It just happened to be at Red Bull.
Mm-hmm.
And this is uncharted territory for them. And it's outside of their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, you've had offsets. You've had Vettel and Webber. Vettel was clearly better than Webber, but Webber wasn't a slouch.
Yeah.
You had Coulthard and
Webber.
Webber, yeah.
That was equal, if you ask me. But
Yeah.
Coulthard was at the end of his career.
Right. And Coulthard isn't a terrible driver.
No.
A race winner in his own right. He kept up with Mika Hakkinen. Definitely not to Mika's level, but he kept up. From there, you had Vettel and Ricciardo,
Mm-hmm.
which Ricciardo trounced Vettel
Yeah.
for reasons we've talked about. And then you had this kind of revolving door until they landed on Verstappen.
But Ricardo Verstappen seemed to work really well,
Yes.
which is odd. Which means he should have, quote, never left.
But he felt like he was forced out.
Yeah. Odd.
And this is where I think the management at Red Bull might not be as good as people give them credit for.
I've never thought they were good. I thought Horner is a good face. He knows how to put a good face on Red Bull.
Right.
But you always nailed it. You said behind the scenes it's Newey. That's why they were winning.
Not really, but Marco has a place in selecting drivers, and you have to let him do his job. Keep him away from the media, but let him do his job. I think the death of Dietrich Mateschitz really threw a wrench in it all.
Yeah.
Because Dietrich was involved. And I listened to a podcast with Christian Horner where he talks about this when Ricardo told Horner he was leaving, it came as a surprise, and he went to talk to Dietrich about it, and Dietrich wanted him to stay. Dietrich told Horner to offer Ricardo what they're giving Verstappen. And Horner told him, "Do you have any idea what we're paying Verstappen?" And he said, "I don't care. This pairing works. I want to keep him."
He was right.
And it should have happened. But I think at that point, Ricardo had made up his mind, and it just, no matter what they were offering him, he didn't want to be there because he didn't want to play second fiddle.
What could have been? Imagine Ricardo with that title fight in 2021. Not to say that it was just up until mid 2023. Sergio was still doing a great job.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder what that would have been like with Daniel in that title fight. Anyway, sorry, we're digressing. We're becoming fanboys right now. Just yeah. I like these conversations. So this is what we really are. This is a window into how Sean and I talk to each other about Formula One. But yeah.
Yeah, and we've been talking a lot about Daniel Ricciardo, but we talked about it in the last episode we had together, and I just want to cap it off now by saying Danny's had his chance.
Yeah.
Right? At any other point in F1 history, he would have been gone long before what it's come to now.
Yeah.
He's had his chance. He's had his success. Everybody loves him. It's the end now.
Let's leave it at that. And maybe that's why we're being hard on Lawson.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's good. You and I almost had like a therapist session together right now. We talked it out till we got to a solution.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Still, there's a gap. Like you said, there's a gap between Yuki and Lawson this weekend. Let's hope he can close it. Let's hope he can get back up to speed in a couple races. Because otherwise, it made no sense to have him for these last 6.
Right.
Anything else you want to talk about that you saw in Austin?
Not necessarily something we saw in Austin, but something that came out prior to the weekend. Toyota coming back.
I like it.
Signing a technical partnership with Haas, which is surprising because they have a technical partnership with Ferrari. So Haas is now the most manufacturer-supported team on the grid. They have 2 automotive companies backing them, and arguably 2 of the best performing manufacturers in racing history.
Toyota was really good in what? Rally? They were really good in...
Toyota's got a reasonable rally background. They're good in GT3 with the Supras.
Mm-hmm.
They're good in Super GT in Japan. But Le Mans. They have led the hypercar class in Le Mans for a number of years. Alonso won Le Mans with them. Mm-hmm. Right? Toyota has great prototype legacy there. Once they left F1, that's what they went to do because they were allowed to use hybrids. So this is Toyota Gazoo Racing, which is their wholly owned subsidiary that does nothing but racing. And it's a technical partnership where they get Toyota's manufacturing capabilities, so race manufacturing capabilities. They get simulator access, so they will have their own simulator that they can use and develop. And they have Toyota resources to help design components. So it helps from a standpoint where it gives them more resources for less money. They can be more efficient, so use their smaller budget better, and not have to rely on Toyota and Dallara to not have to rely on Ferrari and Dallara to manufacture the components they're designing.
Mm-hmm.
Gazoo Racing is doing this. The stipulation, though, is that Gazoo Racing drivers now have access to F1.
Which is Zane Maloney's teammate, right?
Ritmo Miata,
There you go.
who won last year's Super Formula, who is not doing great in F2.
Didn't stop Oliver Bierman from getting a hot seat.
No, but
There you go.
Miata's a great driver, don't get me wrong. But it's also guys like, I believe, Kamui Kobayashi, who races Le Mans for them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple others in there, but Sebastian Buemi races Le Mans for Gazoo Racing, and he's also former Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
Brendan Hartley, I don't think Brendan Hartley is currently with them, but he had a stint after Formula One with Gazoo Racing. So there is some decent talent that may become available to them.
And this is Komatsu once again, putting his stamp on the Haas team and not complaining about the budget. Really just dealing with the situation at hand and making it more efficient, better upgrades, better development. This is a sponsorship that he can brag about. Whereas Steiner sits there and brags, oh, I saved the company with this potash company from Russia. We're going to do wonders.
Right.
Anyway.
Now, I just want to cap that off by saying Toyota has been very vocal that this does not mean they're coming in with an engine. They're not signing up to 2026 to be an engine manufacturer. They're not in any place to buy the team. They're not trying to. And I don't pretend to be an expert on Japanese culture. But from my experience working with the Japanese, they like to start off small. Here's a project we can work on. Let's see how this goes. And then they evolve from there.
Haas Toyota 2030 is what you're saying.
Potentially.
Yeah. Okay. I agree.
I have a fairly strong feeling that at some point in the near future, post 2026, we will see Toyota come in with a very competitive engine package.
This is amazing.
It's fantastic.
Audi, Toyota, and then I think we're going to see Andretti 2028.
So we will have Ford, GM, Audi, Mercedes,
Red Bull. Oh, okay. Right. Ford is Red Bull. Sorry. I'm right. Ferrari. Honda with Aston Martin.
Yep. And Toyota.
Amazing.
That is a massive cross-section of manufacturers.
Yeah, that's almost late 90s, 2000s stuff right there.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And not just German and Italian. It is the range.
Do you want to give some quick predictions before we close up?
Let's.
I'm scared. But let's fucking do it. We won't count the sprint. The sprint's going to be an outlier. So we'll just do the main race.
We've never done the sprint before, so.
Yeah. 5, I'm going to have Lewis Hamilton. He doesn't seem comfortable, but like you said, this is his course. So I think he pulls out a top 5 against the odds. 4, Russell. All right, who do you got for 5 and 4?
I'm going to put... Who am I going to put? Sainz in 5, because that's the spot. That's
55-5. I should have done that.
Piastri in 4.
It looks like you got your 3-2-1.
I do.
Okay, we'll get to it. I'll do my 3-2-1, and then you do 3-2-1. 3, I got Norris. 2, I got Leclerc, because I kind of like your idea of Ferrari just causing chaos. And 1, Verstappen.
Okay.
Haven't done Max number 1 in a while.
Yep.
Who you got 3-2-1?
3, I have Hamilton.
Interesting.
2, I have Leclerc. And 1, I have Max.
Okay, so you and I are thinking the same one too.
Which my 1, 2, 3 is exactly what we talked about 20 minutes ago. I think that's it. And I'm realizing I didn't put Norris on here, but yeah, this might be a bad weekend for him.
It might. So we'll see. P10 for me. I want to do Lawson, but no, I don't think it's good. The more I think about it, it's not going to happen. 10, I'm going to go Magnussen. He went long last year in the strategy and it benefited him. I don't think he'll get 9th. I think he'll get 10th.
I want to put Colapinto, but I also want him to finish higher than that.
We'll see.
I'm going to go with Albon. Old Faithful.
Old Faithful in 10. I was going to do Hulk, but I actually think he comes 8th.
Yeah, I think Hulkenberg's up there too.
My outlier is Piastri and Perez outside the points with finishes.
I mean, that might not be an outlier.
Yeah, that might just be true to form right now, but yeah.
My outlier, and this is me shooting for the moon, Colapinto in the top 5.
Wow.
I was extremely impressed with what I saw from him in qualifying. Ultimately, he had his best time deleted, but the fact that I looked over at one point, not realizing it was SQ3 and he was in second place, I think, was mind-boggling to me.
There might be something there, and I think it might just be a case of someone needing more time. My thought is, what do all these drivers like the Lawsons, the Behrmans, the Colapintos, and soon we'll see the Antonellis and Duhans, what are they going to do when the car is not performing? Are they going to be able to get out of slumps? And that's what I'm curious about. But maybe Colapinto will just be able to slightly trend upwards and progress at Williams in these next 9 races, and then maybe Sauber might not be as bad as we think they are.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about this now that you've mentioned Duhan, because I totally forgot about him and that he's going to be with us next year.
He's very forgettable.
Duhan, Behrman, Colapinto, to me seem like the same personalities to Albon. Now, this is not racing ability. This is not driver skill. This is personality, right? Albon is, from all interpretations of him, a very nice guy. Everybody likes him. He doesn't seem to push. He doesn't get on the radio and yell. He doesn't have an attitude. You can hear it when he's talking to the team on the radio, especially when he's being critical of the team, that it almost hurts him to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that Vowles said, and I think Capito said as well, that they were trying to push him to get out of his comfort zone, to be that leader and to push the team to do better. And it feels like Behrman, Duhan are that same personality. They're not going to rock the boat. They're not going to get angry. They're not going to yell because they're happy to be in F1. Right? My only hope is that translates to reasonable skill, reasonable effort. Right? You can overcome a lot with hard work, but at some point you have to have the skill to do it.
The best have been fiery.
Yeah, and that is a competitive spirit, and it is a team sport as much as the driver is on their own and has to do their bit in the car. They need a team behind them to give them that.
Mm-hmm.
So you need the driver to effectively be the captain to push them to do better. So that's why I'm not sure that we'll see guys like Duhan and Behrman be world champions, but they might be there to play the support.
To be continued.
Yes.
F1_philosophy at YouTube. At Instagram, sorry. And F1 Philosophy at YouTube. Join the Fantasy League at f1philosophypod@gmail.com for next year, please. We'll start advertising it now. We had a nice conversation here.
We did.
I would like to see. I'm now just going to, I'm at the point where I'm just going to stop shit talking. I'm just going to let it play out, and we'll see what happens with Duhan and Behrman.
Yep.
Cool.
If you have questions, please email us. Please comment wherever you find us, and we will do our best to answer them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Cairo, I haven't heard him in the last 2 hours, so that means Gatsby killed him and buried him in that time.
Probably best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gatsby's not there. Oh, he's back. His paws are very dirty.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.